July the 31st, 2022. Guys, you're looking at a picture, or I guess you'd call this a movie poster of The Walking Dead, one of the shows. And we've talked about prepping here for years, and there's hundreds, if not thousands, of channels, not only here, Canada, every nation on the planet, that have talked about prepping, water, survival food, survival tactics, protection, things like that for years and years. And what we're starting to see now is a lot of people not too long ago that kind of gave you a crazy look when you talked about, you ask them a question like, are you trying to save a little rice and beans or other things like that, or you even thinking about it, what's going to happen when the collapse occurs? And we're seeing it with the diesel fertilizer. Each day the reports are more and more dire with them cutting off power in many places. As a matter of fact, guys, Hawaii, I think maybe today, received their last shipment ever of coal. This is a U.S. state. And this coal was to run their power plants. And it was the cheapest that they had. So now they're going to have to switch to oil burning plants, things like that. And they're talking about maybe a 10%, it's a 10 times increase in the cost of energy. We're looking at the destruction of every nation on the planet. And that's because Satan does not like God's creation. Again, we've talked about survival, food, protection, water, and all of these things. But there was something about The Walking Dead, and I saw several sections of this, one winter before last or something like that. And it was interesting to me, and it wasn't about the zombies. Now, that was in there for show and to bring your interest into it. But what was really the problem? It was that society had broken apart. The military had done its thing as much, whether it was military or martial law with military control or fighting some unknown enemy, whatever. That had basically disappeared, if you remember any of this show. If you haven't, it's kind of interesting on the level that a lot of times Hollywood will show you what is coming. Again, the zombies was to get people's attention, but it was all wrapped up in the plot, kind of like a soap opera. But what was the plot? It was that society had collapsed. They were searching for supplies, food, water, the whole thing like we talked about. But the main problem was this. There were many kingdoms, M-I-N-I, many, or micro kingdoms emerging with their own leaders. Now, what's happening here, and we've talked about it, I say here in the U.S., but it's probably worldwide, is that we've talked about bringing communities together to forming some type of communication, working hand in hand, whether it was food or protection or whatever, warnings or whatever. But what we saw here was that you give a little power to somebody and it goes to the head. Power leads to corruption. And that's what we're going to be seeing here, again, around the planet. And the reason I say that is there already are communities that are preparing for continuity of government, whether it's a cul-de-sac or an entire city or an entire town. And when that happens is they're going to try to prevent anarchy. In other words, just a mass wave of chaos, of hungry people that are robbing and stealing. That this is something I've talked about for 10 or 12 years, is that wave of chaos. And you want to be able to survive it. But all these communities now are starting to do this, and what we're going to have a problem with is that in my community, we know most of the people. We're kind of a rural community. We're spread apart. As far as no one's house, we don't have neighborhoods. There's a house here and down the road, maybe another one, things like that. But we're close knit. And I'm not too worried about it here, but when you start dealing with the city, the subdivisions, and the outlying areas that you're not sure about, after it all hits the fan, are you going to start seeing these overlords? And that was the whole point, or the whole focus of The Walking Dead, was there were overlords that for one reason or the other had become diabolical, murderers, mass murderers. In order, what was their excuse? To protect their neighborhood, their kingdom, their cul-de-sac. And I want you to think about that. That's going to be one of the things you're dealing with. In other words, especially for the folks that are not quite prepared, you're going to be wondering, you're going to be going place to place. Are you going to walk into a small town, cul-de-sac, village, and end up in deep trouble? And you remember the one scene or the one episode that involved cannibalism? So these are factors, guys, and we're talking about the greatest tribulation that man has ever seen. These are factors that you've got to be aware of, because tyrants will rise on power with a power trip. And so it could be the next town from you, the next cul-de-sac, the next village, the next rural area. So it's something that you need to put in the back of your head, because outside of your known circle, you're not going to be, things are going to happen where people are desperate. And desperation is what we saw in this series and many others like them, that the messages were being sent from Hollywood, was that desperation will bring these tyrants to life. It will breathe life into them. And because when it goes down, there's going to be good and bad people both that survive at first. And the ones that want to be the leaders, those are the ones you've got to watch. It would be much better, a small group, everyone just communicate. There's no leaders. You don't want a leader, because that's, again, where these tyrants come from. So you want to be close-knit. You want to be aware of your surroundings. You want to have communication between everyone on an equal ground. Not equal as far as equality, but equal in the sense that everyone's responsible. Some people may be more adept at certain things, hunting, fishing, camping, other protective measures, farming, whatever it is. Work together. You don't need a leader. Remember, that was a problem in the Old Testament. When the first king was elected, God said, you don't need a king. They said, oh, yes, we do, because we're so stupid we can't do anything without it. And so he said, okay, they're going to draft all your folks. They're going to bring a lot of hell down on you. They're going to tax you. And that's what we've seen ever since. So when all of this goes down, you want to keep that in the back of your mind. Don't run to some man in the group for salvation, because that's been the problem the whole time. There's only one way to salvation, that's through Christ and through our Father in heaven. Guys, it's just things like that that are not being talked about very much, that you better be aware of, because these things are going to rise very quickly. When it goes down and there's a power vacuum, there's going to be many that try to fill that vacuum. And there is where the long-term tribulation begins. After it hits the fan, the wave of chaos goes through, then the survival mode starts. The different groups start trying to survive. They start trying to wander around, finding food, things like that, supplies. And all of us are going to go through that. But the better you're supplied now, the main problem you will have then is protecting your people and your survival supplies. Never put all your eggs in one basket. Have multiple places that only you know and key people in your family know, in case one goes down. But guys, on our website at BP Earthwatch, one of the key things is water filtration. Now, like many companies and I don't know this for sure, but many companies now are having discounts on different items because we saw the lockdowns and shutdowns come. There was supply chain issues. Then once they saw that all these industries saw that the need that people had for these supplies, whether it was food or whatever, they started ordering more and more. Well, now that the economy is tanking, a lot of folks can't afford it, and so they're having to discount. So what we're seeing, even in the emergency food supply, water filtration is the same thing. Some of the companies don't have anything at all, but the company that has supported our channel forever, My Patriot Supply, still has the Alexa Pure water filter for $199. And what I've said about that is the filter that comes with it's a charcoal gravity filter. You don't need any electricity. Will filter 5,000 gallons of water. That's like me saying again, this is a repeat, that would you pay someone $200 to back up a truck with 5,000 gallons of the cleanest filtered water you can get, back it up, delivered to your home? Then after that, the second truckload would cost you only $85 because that's what the replacement filters cost. So, and there's a report out that is it Las Vegas, New Mexico? Some of my friends let me know there that because of the big fires, that river that you guys, I think was your only water supply, is so heavily polluted with ash and mud and sediment that you can't drink it. And there's a month maybe supply, or maybe a little more than a month supply of water that's stored, and then you guys are out, they're going to have to truck it in. With a water filter, you can get a lot of that out of there. It may be slow. The more mud or things like that's in the river, the more you're going to have to clean these filters. But guys, you're going to have to do something. The West is in trouble. Lake Mead has tried to balance out over the last few days, mainly because Lake Powell above it has let out a lot of water, but that's ending. But Lake Mead got the flooding water and a lot of the runoff that you saw flood the casinos in Vegas. And so it balanced it out. But and you saw a great intake on the Lake Mead charts on that day. But now that was kind of a freak storm. It moved from there, it moved through Kentucky. We saw massive floodings around the planet, a lot of deaths. Kentucky, I think, now is up to 25. And that's sad because as much as we need the rain, when you live in those mountain valleys, guys, you have to be aware of your weather. Kentucky, the Carolinas, Tennessee, the Appalachian Smoky Mountains, all that area. With what we're seeing today with the dramatic changes in weather, the extremes in the heavy rain or hail or drought or heat, floods, and we're about to go into August, and that's when we're going to see the hurricanes start picking back up. But if you live in these valleys, the folks in Kentucky, they know about this, but they weren't ready. They weren't prepared. If you're living where you can see mountains on both sides of you and in your town, there's a river running through it, kind of like Gatlinburg and other places, then when you have these 1 year of rain come in one night, you've got to get to higher ground. You cannot go to bed if you know that type of storm is coming in. If you know there's bad weather coming in, check your weather. See if they're putting flood watches and warnings on you, and then double that, because that's what we're seeing in these emergencies right now. Again, Vegas, if any of you guys saw that, the doors were closed on the casinos, but it looked like about 4 feet up on the doors. Through the cracks, water was pouring in, telling you it was that deep on the other side. And Joey from one of the folks that we watched there, Vegas D-Tech, remember Joey? He hasn't put up anything since that flood, and I think he worked maybe as a bartender. But so I hope he comes on and does something. I hope we find out that he's okay. But we're watching this, guys, but think a little bit beyond what we're looking at now, because the overlords that I'm talking about are in place whether they know it or not. And people are going to rush to look for a man or woman to save them. Greatest mistake in the history of the world. But it's about to happen again, and you're going to see this division spring up. So you're going to have to not just make it and get your survival things ready as far as your preps, but you got to have the mental state and your mind prepared for the situations around you. Again, the powers that be know that this chaos and these civil wars and this Mad Max situation is going to happen. Why, they're in their bunkers, thinking that they're safe. God says you can't go deep enough and you can't go high enough that I'm not going to find you. Not verbatim, but you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. Again, check out bpearthwatch.com. Support the channel, guys, but most of all, the survival food, the water, solar power. These are the things that are going to be cherished when it all hits the fan, because right now, just like you're seeing in Hawaii, you're seeing in Europe with Russia and the gas situation, there's going to be power blackouts everywhere by design. We're watching it. You watch it, guys. It's a heads up. Be safe.